Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to some brand new content here on the Plotaholics YouTube channel. I'm Shane Wilson, and I'm joined by the third Plotaholic, Mr. Joe Compton.
Hello, everybody.
Joe, obviously, a lot of hype around the new Dexter limited series, and so we thought we would get in here and sort of rehash those early seasons and give a definitive ranking before we go into the next season. Joe, we'll just start right off the top with season one. Remind us what all we got to in that first season of Dexter.
Yeah, well, first season was really interesting because that was the evolution of Dexter. We got to learn about his code, what it meant. Then came along the Ice Truck Killer, which was the big bad of the series, and which established how the series indexes itself throughout all the rest of the seasons. It's basically Dexter dealing with some kind of evolution in his own personal strive to be a person and manage his killer instincts and who he is. And this is like the very beginning of that. He's already been through quite a bit of it. As we start this first season, we go right into it. The first season follows the Ice Truck Killer, who turns out to be Brian, which is Dexter's brother. And it turns out to be Dexter's brother, and Dexter's brother is trying to get him to completely absorb himself in the darkness. And Dexter has to make a choice between the dark and the light. Does he go through with his code, which would then dictate that he has to kill his own brother? Or does he go with his brother and see how that all happens? This is this big dilemma that goes throughout the entire season, and we establish his relationships with all the other people involved because he is a Metro Miami police officer. Well, he's part of the police force. He's a blood spatter analyst specialist. So he goes and does the CSI for the blood aspect of everything that happens on these crime scenes. He works with a bunch of Metro police officers and detectives to solve a lot of these murders. And the Ice Truck Killer is the one that is baffling everybody. And Dexter figured it out, but then he didn't expect the twist to happen. That for the last 3 episodes, I would say, he wrestles with that dilemma and how he decides what direction he's going to go.
It's such a strong debut for a series, right? And obviously, I think it probably benefits from having some solid source material on which to base itself in the novels. But yeah, man, like the Ice Truck Killer is such a compelling big bad. And I feel like this show was always at its best when the big bad was explicitly connected to Dexter in some way. Because there's something, I think, about the proximity that makes it more intense. When he starts dating Deborah, there's this like claustrophobic quality to certain seasons of this show where it just feels like the walls are closing in on him. And that is when it's at its best, when they ratchet up that tension as much as they can.
And especially in this first season when he's really wrestling because he has a relationship of his own that he just started in season 1. And he's kind of wrestling with being a person.
Where do we rank this? Is this an S tier season? Is this I feel like we definitely agree that it's a top of the line season of television.
I would say A or B is a good parameter. This is pretty much an A season. I
feel like it is, and the reason that I have no qualms with putting season 1 of Dexter as an A is because of how many first seasons of television fall flat. Here was a show that came out with a clear identity. Every character's moral compass was so well developed before they even hit record.
Yeah.
That you get the sense, at least early on in this show, for the first several seasons, that they were never figuring it out as they went. Season 2, Joe, is where Dexter essentially has to go up against himself.
In a lot of ways, yes, and fight off Mr. Dokes.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Dokes is such a good character, but man, like I was talking about the tension and how claustrophobic the show feels. I don't know that there's another source of that claustrophobia that's stronger than Dokes.
I would totally 1000% agree.
Because that dude is on his ass the whole time.
That scene where Dexter outsmarts him when they're in his little room, and then they go out and basically Dexter makes him attack him.
I own you.
Fuck. That just causes all this kind of doubt in an interesting way. That
Yeah.
to me was the brilliance of the writing they
Well,
do.
and how the series was able to deal with Dokes while also allowing Dexter to maintain his integrity to his code. I think that we have to throw a little bit of light over to Lila, right?
Yeah. And
And
technically, if you get technical, she's
yeah,
probably the big bad in this series, this season. This is the only
I
season
would
that doesn't
I
have
would
that.
argue that that's probably the case.
Could have had it all, Dexter.
At the center of this season is the discovery of Dexter's graveyard. And so they label this new killer the Bay Harbor Butcher. And so the entire season is really Dexter trying to figure out how to not get found out. And Dokes is just right after his ass on this whole thing. And the crescendo of this season is right up there, I think, with the best of them, for sure.
I agree.
And so I would argue that season 2 belongs right up there as well, right?
Totally agree, 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, those are both.
That was my second favorite season in my personal rankings.
Season 3, things get a little bit different here.
This one's interesting because I think it's one of the slower seasons. I think like the beginning is really slow. I like the Miguel. I like the setup with
Miguel Prado.
I like his setup and everything, but it's really slow how they twist it.
I almost think that that's a necessity because you're talking about a politician that gets converted. Their friendship is so compelling because you get the sense that Dexter wants to keep him at arm's length, but there's something under the surface of this man that feels so at home to him. He feels a camaraderie there. And it's interesting because with Miguel Prado, he's not a murderer whenever they first meet, but he has that instinct.
He's got that slimy politician feeling to him. Jimmy Smits is one of those actors that when he comes into a series, he really comes into a series. This is one of those seasons, though, that I'm like on the fence about, because I do think it starts really slow.
Yeah, I do. I agree that there are probably some pacing issues here, but I think that the payoff, I think that the storyline is still coherent, and I think that the characters are still developed efficiently and effectively.
One thing I will say about this season that really elevates season 4 is that it sets up the idea that the big bad isn't somebody who's obvious, right? It's somebody that could be connected to Dexter. And I think what Dexter really learns from Miguel is that he has to be cognizant of that person could be right next to him.
Dexter is really compelling when his character runs up against a character that's as dominating as he is and forces him to see things from a different perspective. So 3, I agree, is a little lower on the list for me.
It can be a B. I mean, just simply for Jimmy Smits alone, I think it's probably a B.
Season 4, I think we can go ahead and slap this bad boy in the S tier, and then we can talk about it.
Yes, I agree.
Because I don't know that there's any debate on whether it's at the top.
Absolutely not. I mean, if you're a fan of this series, this is the be-all, end-all. I think it's the best 14 episodes of television I've ever seen. I really feel that strongly about it. It's iconic for, obviously, the ending, but it's also iconic for moments, like the moment that Trinity Killer walks into the precinct, and he looks down at his badge and he goes,
"Hello, Dexter Morgan."
I'll never forget this. This was the first time that you really felt like Dexter was boxed in a corner, and yet you still figured he was going to get out of it. It was like one-upsmanship. This was tit for tat.
It was definitely the first time that you got the sense that he was doing the chasing. Trinity Killer was always one step ahead, whereas everyone in past seasons always felt like, even though they were closing in, they were always a step behind. But this guy from the jump had Dexter's number.
This is also the time when he started to really hone in on Rita, and the two of them started talking about life.
He was trying to navigate both, right? How can I do both things? And he was obviously struggling with that. We can talk about the finale a little bit, because this season is full of those echoes and those callbacks to how Dexter was originally found by Harry. It's poetry, which is what makes the season so great.
People forget that probably, I think it's episode 3 or 4, Dexter goes on a road trip. Trinity Killer wasn't as impressive to him until after that road trip. When he gets back from that road trip, it's like all balls to the wall going after Trinity from that point forward.
And what can you say about this? Is one of those shows and one of those season finales that just did what it did and didn't give no F's about nobody. I mean, the brilliance of it, Rita is killed at the end of this thing. They spent this entire season showing Dexter finally buying in and having this kid, and now he's finally trying to be a father, and he's finally figuring out a way to navigate both of these things. But then this happens.
And the brilliance of Trinity getting the last laugh while he's on the table is just absolutely a stroke of genius.
Definitely S tier. I would argue that the next season, while it does offer a definite drop in quality from season 4, I didn't get the sense that season 5 was off the rails yet.
I think I suffer a lot from season 4 hangover in this respect. Mm-hmm. This is one of the seasons I ranked very low. The whole mentoring aspect of this idea that he takes this girl in, Lumen, who is kind of searching for redemption, but she's really using Dexter in a lot of ways to kind of just as therapy. There's also another element with the Miami Metro Police Department where they're chasing somebody that's not really related, which is kind of odd. It gets Dexter kind of caught in a web that he didn't expect to get caught in because he was not paying attention. This is the first time you really see Dexter vulnerable.
It's because he really does fall in love with Lumen. Dexter's been so regimented his entire adult life. Lumen broke all those barriers down. I think that's why he gets sloppy. He's able to completely relax with her. He doesn't have to put up walls at all.
The one thing I will say about this, Johnny Lee Miller as a big bad just excites the shit out of everybody. I was excited to hear that he was the big bad in this season, and he's really nothing. And that's shameful because he's such a great actor, and he could really probably have done a lot more with this. But we're so stuck on the Lumen Dexter thing, and like you said, he gets sloppy and all that. And it doesn't feel like the cohesiveness that the other seasons had for me.
While you experienced season 4 hangover, I feel like this show benefited from season 4 momentum because it had set some storylines in place that was able to give it a little bit of a push. But after this season is where I feel like it really starts to come apart.
I can see that. I'm biased because of season 4 hangover.
I definitely agree that season 5 is not S tier at all. It's not an A season. And I don't even think that I put it as high as Miguel Prado. This is probably like a C level for me.
I would probably have gone D or E, but C is fine.
Go
C
D?
is fine.
I can give it a D.
You make some compelling points though about it being a C. So I think
Okay.
like I said, I think I'm not fair with this season just because of the hangover of 4.
To be completely fair, I have watched through 3 or 4 episodes of season 6, and then I fell off. And then I watched the finale, the series finale. And that was it for me.
So the thing that's put 6 over 5 just a little bit for me is that the big bad is compelling in one aspect. And that is he is actually a mirror of Dexter in certain respects, but in a fallible way. So Colin Hanks is really something. He's okay. He's not his dad, right? I mean, that's the problem that we have with Colin Hanks oftentimes is that he's blasé in a lot of things he does. He's a really great actor, don't get me wrong, but I just feel like he's the afterthought in a lot of these, and season 6 really emphasizes that because Edward James Olmos is really the bad guy, but he turns out to be the dark passenger of Colin Hanks. He's not real.
Yeah.
It's in Colin Hanks's imagination. The entire time. The end is absolutely abhorrent.
Here's sort of my biggest beefs with this season. First, the dark passenger thing with Colin Hanks. I feel like this is problematic from a storytelling perspective because this series is narrated by Dexter, which means that this series is from Dexter's POV, which means that Dexter would not see that man.
Yeah.
There's like a narrative inconsistency with that device.
Absolutely.
The next thing is here's where I first start to see Dexter start to unravel for me as a character, just his mannerisms and the way that he would interact with people when they were on the table. It's just started to feel really inconsistent with the Dexter of earlier seasons. This one has a time jump, right?
Yeah. And it also has a bunch of things that seem so out of character for every single character.
And I also would maintain that almost any time a series does a time jump like this between seasons, it's a stupid idea. Because ultimately what they're doing is they're taking a shortcut so they don't have to deal with the fallout from the previous season. Let's go ahead and rank this.
This is F or E for me. This is at the
This is F. It made me fall off, so I'm throwing it at the bottom.
I have to say that's a proper ranking for it.
Then this next season is your favorite, and I have nothing to contribute here. I did not watch it, though I guess I should. Tell me about season 7.
Season 7 introduces two really interesting dynamics. Deborah finds out that Dexter is the Dark Passenger and the Bay Harbor Butcher, and they have to deal with that. And it kind of the one thing the season gets scuffed by is because she deals with it in the weirdest, ineffectual way, and she has to make a decision at the end of 7 that kind of changes everything.
Isn't this sort of where things start to get kind of oddly incestual between these two?
That's the other weird aspect of it, but it has a saving grace in that respect, and that is Hannah McKay. Hannah McKay comes into this, and this is the start of a big bad arc, but it's not really. It plays off of the Lila idea, but in a different aspect. He falls in love with Hannah only purely because the two of them understand each other and are the same Dark Passenger, same person. In a lot of respect, it's the thing that endears me to this season. And Dexter gets a little bit of his mojo back in this season, which
I was really off put by what he was doing in that previous season. So let's rank our 7th season that you like.
I would say it's a C. It's a C. For the incestuous stuff, and there's a lot of clunkiness to it, but the Hannah McKay,
but it passes, right? Like in the great bell curve of Dexter.
Yes, I think it passes.
This is at least a step back in the right direction. Like it gives you hope. Here's hoping that next season they'll get it right and stick the landing. And
Season 8 of Dexter is a complete total mess. It's an absolute garbage dump. It is like, how quickly can we get out of this season is like every episode. It's like, what are we doing? Let's close that loophole. Let's close that loophole. Let's close that one. That open-ended. Let's close that. And it's just a mess.
I think, having watched the Dexter finale, that it's ridiculous.
Yes, it's absolutely phenomenally ridiculous. It almost feels like that stupid cop out of a dream within a dream kind of idea. It really has that feeling.
Well, he drives off. Well, he drives his boat off into a hurricane and then shows up as a lumberjack.
His last kill was Deborah,
which I feel like was just so not in his character.
There's just so much that is not Dexter in this season.
Like I said, I've only seen the finale, so I don't have a much of an opinion. But it feels like you're putting this pretty low as well.
Yeah, this is an F for me, for sure.
F for you. Joe, thank you so much for hanging out and talking about Dexter.
Yeah,
and
thank you for having me as always. I love doing the show as always, so thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, why don't you tell the folks at home where they can find you?
I run a network called GoIndieNow, which you can find on youtube.com/GoIndieNow. We're on Facebook, GoIndieNow, all that. Everything's GoIndieNow except for Twitter. So I'm Joe Dream 73 on Twitter.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure that you like and subscribe and all of that good stuff, and we'll talk to you again next time.